So good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all our viewers of Intimate Conversation around the globe. And I hope life is treating you well and that you're actually creating the world that you wish to live in. So today we have our gorgeous guest, and this is Kirsty Lee. So welcome, Kirsty, to this Intimate Conversation.
Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Been looking forward to this. I love your work and what you do. So I will just read your bio and introduce you to everybody, Kirsty. So Kirsty Greenshields is a conscious creator living in divine union within and without. Her awakening to this truth began in 1998 when a parachuting accident turned her world upside down. It was the impetus for her to begin to take action rather than just float along with life happening to her. She met her soulmate in 1998 too, and they began a romantic relationship in 1999. A few years after that, her awakening took another leap as she discovered the extent to which she had been living a lie. This discovery gave her the courage to leave her 9-year military career and begin to study naturopathy in 23. As she embarked upon this path, she continually encouraged herself to seek answers to more and more previously unasked questions. Kirsty has assisted hundreds of people around the world to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Her experience with her own treatment during the dark period of her late 20s helped her realize her passion of natural medicine and the power of the human body to heal. In 27, she was confronted with the greatest challenge of her life up to that time, and she now realizes it was presented as an opportunity to deepen the gnosis of the innate power of the human body to heal and the importance of self-authority. Kirsty's experience with healing and life is eclectic and broad-ranging, from army officer to full-blown hippie. In 2013, Kirsty self-published her first book, Woman, Money and Intimacy: How to Create Real Wealth in Your Life. As an in-depth guide to self-reflection and self-generation, the book originally began as a way to process the trauma she had experienced as a result of her life's lessons. It became a friend who helped to begin to integrate the tools she had learned into her daily life and also to transcend her suffering so she could receive her heart's desires. Kirsty's highlight of 2016 was her involvement as a volunteer naturopath in Australia's first Indigenous health retreat in Elcho Island. The project is called Hope for Health, and the team worked with 25 female elders of the community. They provided complementary and natural health care, physical education, and food education in their first language. As a result, after 2 weeks, remarkable results were achieved. Through adversity comes strength, so the saying goes. It is in finding her own authentic voice that Kirsty learned how to effectively lead her husband and countless other women and men since, to find the thing inside that wakes them up to live a more powerful life, not a fairy tale life, but a life where challenges help them grow stronger, excuse me, so they can create greater meaning for themselves and for the world around them. Kirsty is also a director of Resilient Leaders Foundation, a non-profit organisation which enhances the lives of the individual and the family and the wider community. It does so by provision of community leadership programs, emotional awareness, and education about mental and physical health and well-being. The organisation promotes collaboration and community engagement and development. Wow, Kirsty. Very, very cool. You've been a busy lady.
One of the things that I realized when you were reading that was we did create Resilient Leaders Foundation, but it is now called Emergent Leaders Foundation because of the terms of the energy that's come about with the word resilient in the last couple of years. And so we wanted it to be more aligned with principles of diversity and also nature. And the emergence in the forest are the trees that grow really fast to provide shelter for the other trees. And so we felt like that was a really great name. So it's actually called Emergent Leaders Foundation now. So I just wanted to say that because I realized when you read resilient, I was like, no, it's not called that anymore.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, you've done some really interesting things. Let's start with the parachute shooting accident. That would have been terrifying. What actually happened, and could you see, like, obviously a lot of the time a lot of accidents or things happen in our life to wake us up.
Yeah.
Could you see how that came in at a time to wake you up at all? How did you get through that, and how did it change your life?
Absolutely. At the time, I don't think I would have seen it, but it's funny because you would be like me and I see everything symbolically. And I realized when you were reading that, it helped me realize that I could actually create my life instead of just floating along and it happening, because the parachuting accident was in one of the military parachutes. So, you've seen in the movies when they jump out of the planes and they've got those round parachutes, from World War I and World War II, and they can't steer them. Like you literally jump out of the plane and then you do this drill. And then part of the drill is to look up to make sure that the chute's opened. And, you jump out about 1,000 feet above the ground. So it's not super high. You jump out off this
high
line.
enough though. High enough.
Yeah, high enough. You jump out off this line, you've got no escape, and then you look up to make sure the chute's opened, and then you basically hold on for dear life until you land, and then you do your landing drill. And because I was the only woman on the course, my boss was like watching me through the binos, and he said I did a perfect landing, but I broke my ankle. And in the reflections that I've actually done, just even the most recent years, all the accidents that I've ever had, I've been falling from a height. And so, like we do when we go deeper and deeper into lessons, for me personally, what I've realized is that, when I was 18, I think I was 18 or 19, I sprained my left ankle really bad playing netball. I was doing a tryout for the first netball team and I sprained my ankle. When I was 7 years old, I broke my left wrist falling from a monkey bar. And when I was 23, I broke my right ankle falling from the sky. That particular accident, the parachuting accident, I had 3 months before that, I'd got married to a man that I actually never said yes to getting married to. I was literally floating along, just doing what I thought everyone's wanted me to do to be a good girl. And that parachuting accident came with a thud, like to wake me up and say, girl, get out of here.
Yes.
And so that obviously comes in reflection. And for me, it was at the time in the story, I see myself, and I had to be heavily drugged because I was in a lot of pain, and I felt hopeless and powerless. But what it did, it was the impetus for me to actually get myself out of there. And part of me did run away. Like I ran away from that situation because I was only 23. I didn't really understand what was happening or what I'd done. But because I did have the courage to go, no, something needs to change, I did change the trajectory of my life. And and it put me on, it set me on the path to finding something new.
Wonderful. And that's so good that you had the insight though, to actually change it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm just so grateful for, whilst I know I didn't, obviously I didn't have the level of awareness that I have now, I had enough of a level of awareness to go, no, I need to do something here. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily being kind to myself, because I was still really angry at myself for getting myself in the situation in the first place. Because if I'd simply said no,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was also a case of me seeing quite quickly, actually, a pattern that my mum had gone through, and seeing that I was replaying that same pattern. And
Mm.
she was in a marriage for 14 years. I was only, thankfully, in a marriage for like just over 12 months. So
Right.
yeah, so I was able to change the course of our DNA as well, so that,
Beautiful.
generationally.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Because it's those patterns, as we all know,
Yeah,
those are the things, we're here to look at those and to actually not do what mum and dad did, not do what their grandparents did. We just get it, follow suit. We just come into our own relationships and just do the same thing.
yeah,
So it was great that you saw that and changed that.
yeah,
Mm,
I'm really grateful. I'm
yeah.
really grateful that I was able to see it.
Yes. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. And so tell me about the Indigenous healing.
Oh,
That there really sort of sparked me on. It was like, what was that all about, and how did that come about, really?
yeah, that was such a beautiful experience, because it so I saw this opportunity come up, like it was on a social media or something. And I thought, I'm just going to apply for this. I'm going to apply to be a volunteer. And so when my second daughter was born in 2008, I was practicing naturopathy at the time. But in 2012, I decided to forego my registration, because I actually didn't like the way that the whole system was going as far as registrations go. And so I wasn't practicing clinically as a naturopath, but I obviously have lots of knowledge, and so much, eclectic knowledge as well. And so
Mm,
I just thought, all right, I'm just going to apply with that knowledge as a naturopath. And I also studied massage. Like, that was the first thing I did when I was deciding to leave the army. And so I put down all of those, and I got a call from the director, and he said, would you be interested in joining us as a volunteer massage therapist? And I went, yeah, sure. Like, that sounds great. And then I got off the phone to him, and I said to James, I reckon I'm going to be going as a naturopath. Like, I reckon I'm going to be on the team of naturopaths. Anyway, about 2 weeks before the retreat, he rang me and he said, one of our naturopaths has pulled off. Will you come and be a naturopath? And I was like, sure. And so for me, what it was for me was like really affirming of my knowledge, because I was working with two younger naturopaths who, had all the up-to-date clinical and technical knowledge, which I didn't have.
yeah.
But at the same time, my ability to be able to relate and determine patterns and things like that was actually an asset. And so there was a team of 3 of us as naturopaths, and what we did was the retreat was actually part of Pete Evans' movie The Magic Pill. So
Oh,
in that movie, there was five cases that they covered in the movie, and our retreat was one of them. And so we did, for 2 weeks, they were on a paleo diet. So there was no sugar whatsoever. We fasted in the night times, and we did gentle exercise every day. And naturopathically, we measured all their stats at the beginning. We measured them halfway through, in a week, and then we measured them at the end. And then each day, because they're Indigenous, and there are, there's high levels of blood sugar, high levels. We would we were actually measuring those every single day, the blood sugar levels, and they remained, those who had lots of issues with blood sugar levels, they remained steady pretty much. Most of them remained steady pretty much the whole time. And we gave them, they had regular massage and gentle exercise every day, and just food. And we were all living like in a campsite together. And so it was a very natural, real lifestyle. And it was just such a beautiful time. Like, we would dance and sing every night, and we'd have campfires, and to see the results of these people, because some of them had operations and things that they didn't even know what the operation was for, because they'd just gone in to see the white doctor, and they'd just done what they needed to do. And because they couldn't speak in their language, they would just like let them. So it was fascinating to me to see where we had come as a culture, and how we disrespect each other's ways of life. And at the same time, to be in this beautiful place where we're all just working together for the same ends. And because of that, we have these incredible results. And the Hope for Health project is still going. So 6 years later, actually, I just got a photo memory on my phone today. 6 years later, the Hope for Health project is still going, and it is run by local women in the community. So they were able to reach it at a grassroots level. So they changed, they added things into the supermarket, because they could only get white flour and white rice, and all those things that are really bad for the Indigenous bodies. And so they were able to bring in fresh fruit and vegetables and those types of things, and actually help them find ways to enjoy eating it, because they hadn't enjoyed eating it, because it was the damper and that kind of thing. That was a treat, and that's what they did. That's what their bodies were used to. So it was so enriching for me, like completely life-changing in so many different ways, and just so satisfying on so many levels for me.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. And did you were they still culturally living their culture in a sense, or were they sort of more in the suburban, if you get me? Had they shifted a lot of their rituals, and did you do a lot of that sort of thing with them? Like you say, camping, singing and dancing, and
we did. And that was fascinating to me as well, because in chatting to some of the ladies, like one of the ladies particularly, because some of the ladies were really good at English, because they would teach at universities in Darwin and stuff like that, or they'd be consultants at the universities for Indigenous studies and stuff. And one of the ladies was telling me that when she was a child, they were still living on the land, and then the missionaries came, and they were taken from the land, and they were put into the buildings and into the community. And so the way they live now is in the buildings and in the community, which is not their natural, the natural habitat of the way they were. So the way that we were living was more aligned to that. And on a daily basis, they still live. When I was there 6 years ago, they were still living in houses, all together and that kind of thing. And the culture itself, the original culture, my observation was that there had been an erosion of that, with certain things that had happened and knowledge and things like that. There was definitely an erosion of the knowledge, which hadn't been as easily passed down, which their natural way of doing things. I mean, there's so many subtleties to it, and there's so many complexities, I'm aware, but definitely what I noticed was that there was an erosion of their innate culture.
Yes, yeah. Has it? Do you feel 6 years down the track that it's improved at all, or do you feel that it's all still as it was then or worse?
I've not been back, so
Mm.
I'm not sure. What I saw was, and I actually spent quite a lot of time with Richard Trudgeon, who wrote Why Warriors Lie Down and Die. So Richard at that time had been living in Arnhem Land for 40 years, and he's a white guy, but he was a brother, basically. Like, they saw him as a brother.
Yeah.
Speaks the language, and he wrote Why Warriors Lie Down and Die was all about the genocide that happened in the 50s, and how they were systematically, how the culture was systematically destroyed.
Right.
And so one of the things I witnessed was the grief of the community. So and it was just a simple part of, someone had died just before we arrived, and as soon as someone dies, their body is taken by the coroner and then flown to Gove for investigation, and then they don't know how long that's going to be in Gove, and then it will be flown back, and then they will eventually get to have their funeral. Now that's not the way they do things, like, someone dies and then everyone comes and pays their respects and grieves and goes through their natural grieving process, and then gets to, have a big party and celebrate the life.
Yeah.
But that whole process there was a great example of how it's been stunted. Like, the culture has been stunted.
Yeah.
And I cannot and will not attempt to speak from a position like of authority or as an expert, having been there only for 3 weeks. But it was fascinating to me to observe these little things that have just kind of been imposed upon these people, that creates a feeling of powerlessness.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and so there were so many layers and so many things.
Yeah. And it's a very as it is here too, it's getting like, there used to be sort of quite defining lines. Now it's so merged and mingled that it's hard to define exactly what needs to happen and how they need to gain their own power back, really.
Yeah.
It's because there's so, as is with everything, there's always the good points and there's the crap points.
Yeah. And
Um,
as well, like, when you talk to the traditional elders, like the really connected wise ones, they're not about collaborating with government rules and government legal stuff and things like that, because they know that that's also imposed, and that's not the laws of nature and the laws of the universe and the laws of the land. So, whilst people can think that they're doing a really good job of giving land back to these people, at their essence, they know that they never lost it anyway, because they never owned it in the first place.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah. It's a very touchy type of subject now anywhere, I think, in these cultures and ways of life. But I think we're, in the many ways that we're coming together now, and lots of new creations starting, and life is starting to, well, we're more aware too. I mean, we've always been, but more aware now that we create our world, and that the world that we've been living in isn't the one we wanted, and the creation that we wanted it to be. So we're now sort of diverting and moving ourselves into what we really would like to see happening on the planet, and living and in more unified, harmonious spaces. But that's got to happen by, self-governance, really, I feel. And once that really starts taking form here, all this conditioning will just sort of start moving off. But there's a wee way to go yet. Obviously.
That's what we're all being offered now, isn't it? Like, that opportunity for self-authority, for self-governance, and really tapping into going, okay, what's right for me? Like, I understand that you think that this is what I should do. But for me, like, it's not okay for me for the state to determine, like, to tell me what I should be doing for the health of my children. That's not that's not what I want for my children going forward. So you know, that in itself is an opportunity. And yeah, there's so many aspects right now where it's in our face of you can actually choose here.
Yes,
If
I
you
know. It is, it's so in our face. And I love that part now where you know, watching the light go on in somebody when they actually realize that when they're saying they didn't have a choice, they actually had a choice. You know, and we've always had choice, and that's something that has been, no matter what situation we've been in, and it always will continue to, we will always still have choice.
always have choice.
And that there, I think for most people is quite a aha moment, because they just don't feel they have choice.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
that's where life starts being really opened and created, when you realize that you actually don't have to accept anything the way it is. You can restructure it and create it some other way. So yeah, I think this time now, for me anyway, I'm excited. I've always been. Once I got over the harshness of how it was all playing out, and came back to create a being, you know, it was good. So yeah, life's exciting in the sense that it's opening new things, opportunities. People talk about risk. I always see it as opportunity, you know, so it's changing the language and just changing the way that we see things sometimes, perception.
Absolutely.
But it's a fun time.
Yeah, and it's just connecting with, like, I'm really grateful that, like, I'm an Aries, so I'm ruled by Mars, and I've got the warrior spirit in me, and you know, I'm really grateful that I have been born with that, and that's has helped me to have the courage to make the hard decisions, you know, like at 23, when it was like, no, you need to get out of here. And then at 20, you know, 27, when I realized, no, you need to leave the army, like you don't align with this energy anymore. And you know, and that's when I said, like, I realized I was being lied to, because that I was living a lie, because I was like, that was in the lead up to the last Iraq war, and I was seeing stuff in the media, and then I was witnessing other things, and I'm going, this doesn't add up here, and I don't understand. And so having the courage to go, like, and everyone just thought I was nuts, like a complete hippie of what are you doing? Like, you've got this whole career path set ahead of you, and you're just going to throw it away. And I did, because I knew that it wasn't right for me. And that's the crux of it. I think, like, we have to tune into what feels right for me, and whatever feels right for me is the way that I have to go, even if it feels hard.
That's right. Yeah. And I too, Kirsty, was really thankful I was the person I am, because all my life I've been, you know, balking authority. And, you know, it got me into trouble at high school, of course, and primary school, you know, and all of that. But I couldn't change it. I couldn't change that in me. And I'm so glad, because this time that we came into, we needed that more than ever, you know, to stand up and stand in your own truth. And I wasn't going to be swayed by anybody, that was for sure. You know, I knew what was right for me, and that if that didn't fit everybody else, well, that's okay, that's their stuff. But, you know,
It's funny though, Mandy, because growing up, I was actually a really good girl. Like, I did all the things that I was supposed to do. I was actually, I realized now, I was a girl. And I think something in me knew what the game was, and knew that I just had to play it, and knew all the right things that I had to do, so that I could just kind of like move along and do what had to be done. It says my internet connection is unstable.
Yes, it's a little bit, but that's okay. We still got it all
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then, you know, when I reached my 20s and I realized, okay, I need to get out of it now. Like, I don't need to play the game anymore.
Yes. Yeah. And it is that thing where, you know, pick your battles, really. And that's, you know, I've known that all my life as well. And I knew that was some sort of game going on, and that I needed to just be strong enough in myself. I was a people pleaser, though, you know, and would do the good little girl thing at the time that I needed to, but not always, you know. like I say, I knew which battle to pick, really, I suppose. And it's been a great thing. I was really thankful for me when we got into this hard 3 years. It was like, thank God I am the person I am. And
Yeah.
that I didn't change that for anybody, you know. And I just
Me
had to keep going. Yeah. It was big though, eh? It was big. It still is in many ways for a lot of people. But you know, when I look at what's being created out there now in this new world, it's just amazing, the stuff that's coming forward. So I just see it as opportunity to better our lives and to make make this world a way better place.
Yeah, me too. 100%.
It's great.
For our children.
Yes. Yeah. So your book, Woman, Money and Intimacy, How to Create Real Wealth in Your Life. That would have been, I know my book was a process, you know, it takes us through a process as we're writing them out, and you know, it sort of comes through you, doesn't it? It's not something that, yeah, I suppose it's different for all sorts of people, but for me it was a process, and I had many aha moments as I went through it of my past experiences. It was like linking things up, you know. Which was great. So explain yours and how that came about.
Well, that's essentially what happened for me too. You know, I think I started reading it when I had the realization that, so Abby, who's my eldest daughter, so James was in Iraq in 2006, 2007. And on the 23rd of April, 2007, his vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb. And it was actually quite miraculous that they survived because of what actually hit them. But when we were like, probably, I don't know, 12 months, maybe not 12 months, somewhere between 6 and 12 months after he got back, we were putting pieces together. And I realized that Abby woke up at exactly, so Abby was 15 months at the time. Abby woke up at exactly the same time that he was hit by the roadside bomb. And it was a middle night for us. It was about 11 p.m. And she woke up, and she never woke up in the nighttime. Like, she was a really good sleeper. She woke up and she was just screaming. And I went into her room and I couldn't, like, there was no way that I could console her, except I just took her into my bed and we just lay there, and I just let her do what she needed to do, and just held space for her. And had the realization afterwards that what we were doing was, like, she was taking me to him to help him, to bring him back. Like, it was, and there's so much around, like, the place where he was hit. I learned in 2012 when I was reading the Pleiadian agenda that it was symbolic as well. And all of these people, like, so many pieces have come in since then.
Wow, cool.
But it started from that particular piece. And we'd learned, you know, in our process of healing from him getting home, because he came home with post-traumatic stress. And so in our process of healing, one of the things we learned was that, you know, I'm the creator of my reality. And so I wanted to ask the question, okay, so if I'm the creator of the reality, my reality, why did I create my husband being hit by a roadside bomb in the Middle East, you know, thousands and thousands of kilometers away, and then returning to me? So it took me on this journey of my relationships throughout my life, particularly with the masculine, and the decisions I'd made about myself as a person. And like, just like you said, like, bringing little stories in and piecing them together and going, oh yeah, this is how I got where I did, you know. And I remembered stories about my first boyfriend and my first sexual encounter, my first marriage, and, you know, all those types of things, and what I'd done to get myself to this particular point where I created. And, you know, and for me, like, I'm not going to spoil any endings or anything, but I had this deep abandonment wound within me of the masculine. And what it was doing was it was helping me to heal that, like this particular situation of, I created this to realize that I'm not going to be abandoned by the masculine anymore. Like he holds me,
Yes.
he is with me, and he comes home to me. And so yeah, it was a really beautiful process. And why I called it Women, Money and Intimacy was because intimacy and money are so delicately intertwined because of the energy that runs them both, and the programming and the conditioning in our DNA. And so, you know, when we can address all of those and look at those little things and come back to this place of, I'm the self-generator, then we are going to create richer relationships. We are going to create more financial abundance in all its forms in our lives. And so it was, as time's gone on, I've recognized how beautiful that book was. Like every now and then I'll go back and read a paragraph and go, oh my God, like I didn't even know what I was writing when I wrote that.
Yes, I know, it's funny, isn't it? It's a great thing. I love it. I love the experience of it. That's amazing. Wow. And he wasn't too injured at all, James? He was.
No, so everything was, he had shrapnel wounds. So he had a shrapnel wound in his elbow and shrapnel wounds in his head. But there was no fit. His arm was quite affected for quite some, like they thought his arm was broken when he came out. But it was just because the shrapnel had hit like a nerve ending. And so there was, you know, I guess an element of paralysis. Physically there was nothing wrong with him. And it was the classic example of, you know, the mental and emotional wounds that no one can see from war. But for him, you know, he is quite open about the fact that being hit by a roadside bomb was not what created post-traumatic stress for him. There was a whole bunch of stuff that led up to it in his life, you know, like life is traumatic. So to come to that point, you know, like if he talked to you, he would share with you those moments that had led up to it as well. So yeah, but no, he's fine. And one of the things, that's another part of the story, was that when he got home, because he was so exposed to radioactivity, we didn't know if we would have another child. So we thought we might just have an only child. And we decided that we would try for another child. And 12 months to the day after he was hit by the bomb on the 22nd of April 2000, he was hit by the 23rd of April 2007, 22nd of April 2008. So 220408, our second daughter was born.
Wow.
Into the world. So she's an absolute miracle. And also, just again, being the creators of our reality, she reminds us every single year that we celebrate miracles instead of trauma and tragedy. So
beautiful. That's so beautiful. Yay. Gosh, that's amazing. And how long after that did he get out of the army? Was it like, did that do it, or was he there for another few years?
No, he was there for a bit longer. He was there for he didn't leave the army until 2009. So we started a healing journey at the end of 2008. And then at the end of 2009, he realized he was done. And and then that sent him on a big dive into post-traumatic. You know, in 2010, he was pretty much suicidal, because obviously he'd had that level of awakening and went into massive powerlessness, and and was right at the bottom of the well at that point. But pretty amazingly, he pulled himself out.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. With your help, I'm sure. And the children's, you know, I mean, even though there might not have been that close like relationship he might have now as being healed, say, there's still those heart pulls that keep us here, I think, too,
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely. And they were what helped him to start healing, because he could do it for me and he couldn't do it for himself, but he realized that he had 2 children in the world and that's what he wanted to start for.
Beautiful. It's lovely.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I do a lot of house clearing or energy clearing for children, and there a lot of children have a lot of nightmares and don't sleep well and have mum and dad up all night and that sort of thing, and being quite, like constant, so they're not really, everyone's sleep deprived. And what I came to realize through these children, and all different age brackets as well, like mostly from say 13 down, but what I came to find with them was that it wasn't so much energetic as in entities around them, or spirit or whatever. It was that they were also, so they had 2 bodies on the planet, and what they were born into, on the ones that I was assisting, were born into beautiful aware homes with parents who were really aware and loving. And then what they were experiencing in their other physical reality was a war zone. And this was the nightmare stuff at night. And one boy had, and I couldn't work out, I'd never really understood why they were doing this, but for me it was that they seemed to be coming in to experience the absolute opposite of their, and the extremes. Of this beautiful, loving, caring environment to this really, destructive war zone. And what I couldn't do was alter any of it because it was chosen. But the other thing was that the parents actually got to understand. And so instead of, thinking as we would about our sleep and all of that, it was more of a compassionate place. Not that it wasn't, but you know what I mean, just that understanding. But also too, excuse me, was one boy, he actually had a helmet, a war helmet that he found in a second-hand shop. Well, mum and dad did, and him, and they bought it, and he had it. It was 150 odd years old or something. And this thing was just something that he actually really, really treasured. And it was his journey too that confirmed for me with the younger little kids that I was tracking and finding where they were going at nighttime and what was upsetting them so much, and found their other bodies in these war zones, is that this boy here was actually coming back out of those sleep states in this terror and explaining the story to mum and dad. So he was old enough to be able to relay it. And he was telling them about the war that he keeps going into every night, and that he was this man and he had this a uniform on, and it related to this helmet very much so. Not that helmet as such, but that was what, triggered a lot of it for him. So he stopped, the nightmares stopped the day that his other part died.
Wow.
And he confirmed it, that he actually had the head chopped off. So it was, and it was really, I didn't quite understand why they needed to, other than they were quite young souls that were wanting to get in as much of an experience from these 2 extremes, for whatever reason, before moving into our newer world, I suppose. I really didn't understand. I didn't know why they'd chosen those 2 very, very different experiences at the same time.
I find that story fascinating for 2 reasons. Firstly, because we have James's helmet in our house that he was hit. So when he was hit, it was the outer shell, so the Kevlar helmet was actually blown off his head, and all that was left was like the bit that goes just around his head, and that's what he's got. And secondly, because what you're describing feels really similar to what my eldest Abby experiences still regularly. And yeah, she's always had these nightmares. And like, I realized before, like, obviously from a really, really young age, like she was 15 months and she was going there to be with him. Like, I just knew it, like every part of my being knew that she went there to be with him. And so, yeah, as you're speaking now, the question arises of, did part of her soul leave itself there on the battlefield? Which is a really great thing, because now we can have that conversation and do a soul retrieval.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She
She's
could,
nearly 17, so she's been dealing with
yeah.
it for a while. Yeah.
And she could have also, there could also be, she may be in a second body who could be in James's, part of his troop team.
Yeah.
I mean, she could be absolutely that. And I mean, sometimes we might sort of look at that and say, oh, well, it's the trauma from that 15-month-old,
Yeah.
and his experience, but she was definitely traveling for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. It was very fascinating and really, really interesting to me too. And it was so many, because it was like, why are these so many children having these terror nights? Like, they're absolutely in terror. So the nightmares, yes, but they're so terrified in them.
Yeah. But that's the thing, isn't it? Like, when you speak to them, they actually know, like, they know what they can articulate quite well what's actually going on for them. It's just
Yes.
a matter of like us going, not dismissing it and going, oh, that's just a dream or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was very interesting. But yeah, cool. I'm glad he wasn't
Sharing that story.
very hurt. Yeah. No, it was a little bewildering to start with, because I thought, oh no, surely not, but more and more, the more I checked in with these other babies, and what was interesting is that their nighttime here was actually daytime over there. And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
they were in the action, it was all active and action going on over there while they were trying to sleep here. So yeah, I could see how it sort of related, really, but it was interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But the beautiful thing, James has got such a beautiful relationship with his two daughters now that he's created because of his healing. And particularly Abby, because she's the eldest daughter and I was the eldest daughter, and I look and see that I see how I've healed and cleared. She's still got abandonment stuff going on, and she's very aware of it and that kind of thing. But it's been cleared to a level within me that means that she can take it to the next level now. And
Yes.
that's what healing is, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just generationally we get the opportunity to purify and purify and purify. So
We do.
yeah.
And that book, my book that I've written, it was a pattern that came through me from Creator. And it's about the first, to find out, is it's about what pattern you carry, and you carry that by the position you came into in the family where you came in. And so the firstborn daughter births through the father, so she carries patterns like him. The second daughter comes over under you. So there'll be the way that her and both siblings play out will be how you and him play out. It's like has that same patterning coming through.
Yeah.
So her patterning, yes, carries through from James, and there will be stuff there for sure.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense too, because personality wise, she's so much like him, and our youngest daughter is much more like me. So yeah, fascinating.
It is. I was blown away when this came through me, because I couldn't understand how I hadn't married someone like my dad, because that's what we get told as female.
Yeah.
You know, I realized 3 months into my marriage that, oh my God, he doesn't do it like my dad did it. And it was really quite scary, you know, because dad was stable. This guy was so not. And so there wasn't the security that I felt from dad in this relationship with him. So years and years later, when this came through, I realized I had actually married my brother, because I come through my dad, my brother, he's firstborn son, so he comes through mum. And it was through his patterning, because we attract the opposite parent. So so with me birthing through dad, bringing his patterns, I attract to me my brother and my mum. And so that was who my husband was.
Yeah, right.
It was like, oh my God, that's why, you know. So it answered that question for me, but it was quite a puzzle up until then, I have to say.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I actually married my dad the first time I got married, when I got married and didn't say no. And then and then when I met James, I'm not sure who I married, but we've said, you know, because we've been together for 23 and a half years now, and we've said we've had no real, we've created our relationship from ground zero, basically. Because we didn't have any real effective role modeling as to how to create what we've actually created together.
Awesome.
So that's been really cool as well.
That's really cool. And that takes a lot of you know, teamwork.
Yeah
Really does, eh?
Yeah, it does.
I wonder if that's why you knew that relationship wasn't for you, in the sense of the patterning too, in that first marriage. Be interesting to check it out in the sense of the patterning and going through it with you. But
yeah no, that sounds really. So in your book you go through those patternings, do you?
Yes. I explain how it works, and there's a method to clear the ancestral lines of it, because our soul group families, like, once a family or somebody in the family gets the pattern and realizes how it's played out and can see it as clear, because it's very clear once you get it, you know, they're all partying in the background going, oh yay, we don't have to come back and do it like that again. So it's like, you know, changing the program for them in their incarnations forward. And when there's things that have been playing out for us that, you know, like we've said, you know, we just follow suit, really. We come out of mum and dad's home and we play mum and dad in our marriages and partnerships, and then our children do the same, and their children, and so on. And that's how it's been forever and ever before us. And so there's certain things that might have been passed through that have now created certain illnesses and disease. Like a breast cancer will be something that an ancestor back there has created an experience which created the emotional program that actually created that disease to come through. And it's just continually picked up on the patterning throughout the family as they get played out. So it's about going back to the ancestor that had the experience, and working from that.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and it's fascinating coming for me, because over the last 2 years we've had a big reset in our relationship, and and all of these sort of questions came up that were there for healing of you know, what does my soul choose, what does my human choose, and melding those two aspects together and deciding, you know, like basically choice of like, who do I actually, you know, do we want to continue in this relationship together? And and so I find all of that quite fun. I'm going to have your book.
No, it's very interesting. It is. And I was very blessed to get it. As far as I know, nobody else on the planet's got this information. So I feel very honored to have had it come through me. But I knew instantly, as soon as I got it, it had to be put into a book. People had to get this, you know. But it takes people on processes. And we do think that we are meant to marry someone like our dad. But if we don't If we birth through our dad on that patterning, we don't, we attract the opposite parent. So that was my dilemma. In the time, it was like, oh my God, he's doing it like my dad. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock. But yeah, good stuff. Once I got the information, it was understandable. I could see it, and how all of my relationships had been that. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
you
what you do,
some wounds to think about.
yes, and you work out what the pattern is, and then what you do is apply into it what dad didn't, or the parent that you birthed through did or didn't do. So that changes it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very cool though.
Mm.
So what have you got in the pipeline? Kirsty, have you got anything exciting being created that you'd like to share? Or how do you help people when they come to you for your gifts?
The biggest thing I've got in the pipeline at the moment is my vegetable garden.
Oh, that's a good place.
Yeah. Yeah, I work with people one-on-one, and I work with people over a period of time if that's what they want. So I'm very since 2020 and the world changed, I felt like I needed to adapt what I do, and people will come to me because I guess my knowledge is broad ranging and I don't really put myself into any kind of box. I just feel that to put out there a resonance of, if someone resonates with me and they feel like I might be able to help, then that I'm open to seeing if I can help them. So but the biggest thing for me is embodiment and integration. Like so many people that you and I have both met over the years have so much knowledge, but they're still living out here. And what I do that I have mastered within myself and therefore help others is like bring that knowledge in to here and actually live from it and live in it and live it. And it just that's the key to self-generation, because it gives us the power to know and to experience and to be. And so really that's what I do. Like I call my course has been called Embodying the Sacred for quite a few years now, because that's what I believe we're doing. When we bring all of that in, we're actually embodying this sacred vessel that that joins heaven and earth. And so yeah, it's like being a more powerful human.
Beautiful. And it is definitely about embodying, and I think we get enough information about ourselves almost on an external, because we might be reading something and something clicks, but it sort of does get left there in many ways. It does. And I know for me, things shifted for me majorly when I embodied, it became an innate knowing within me that was absolutely who I am and what part of me that is, but there was sort of no more doubt or questioning who I am, what I do. And it's a very important thing. And I also know, as you do, that to release anything, we've taken it in and as an experience within the physical. Everything we do is experienced physically, into our body as such. So therefore we have to go there, of course, to release it and to integrate it.
Express it, experience it. Totally. To be in this body, to be human, to me is a gift. Like to know that I actually chose to come into this body to experience all of the stuff. I see it as a gift now, an absolute gift, every single bit of it, even when it's hard.
Yes, me too. And like we said, those moments that we've gone through that have been so difficult, because I don't know that anybody on this planet has had a lovely life where there's been no, big lessons and hardships and all sorts of things. So in those moments, and it takes something like these last 3 years to actually get you like recognizing that, oh my God, this all all of that back there was to bring me to this moment here and to ready me. And that's really how it felt for me. And I knew when I birthed in here that this was coming. I just got shocked on how it was playing out. You know, I thought it was going to be a wee bit pleasant, like more pleasant than that. But yeah, that was a bit of a shock. So I had to sort of regroup to get my head around it, you know. And that this is actually how it is. Okay, then. So we're from here, you know.
Yeah. That's right.
It's huge, eh? But I mean, we did come in for this time, and I see the you know, the beauty in it all now, as we do, all of us, most of us.
Yeah, and we're so courageous for agreeing to come in at this time.
Absolutely. God, yeah. I did question that, though, I have to say. At one point I was like, have I actually got this, you know, like
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it was great. So wonderful talking with you and chatting with you, Kirsty, and excuse my coughing. But we are also looking at bringing in James at some point too, so that will be lovely. I see a lot of his wisdom that he puts out on, you know, Facebook is where we usually see things, don't we? And you know, he's inspired me for a long time as well with his writings and his open sharing, the masculine, you know, being vulnerable to open into that has been what I've really seen with him. It's lovely. And yeah, so good on both of you for keep going, and obviously you will, and all your work.
We don't have a choice. Oh, hang on. Yeah, we do.
Exactly. Yeah. And yes, these vegetable gardens, it's great getting back into it again. I used to grow everything, and now I sort of hadn't for many years, and now I'm back in there, and it's lovely.
It's so good, isn't it? I'm just about to go plant some corn. So
same. I'm just going to go out and do some of that too. We've got a lovely day here, so I thought, go out and plant some plants. So lovely talking and chatting, and all the very best for everything that you're doing in the future and with your family.
And same to you. Thank you so much. So great to chat.